Greetings, crew members. Now, I don't watch a lot of Paul W.S. Anderson films. You may know him as the man who makes the high-budget, lowbrow adaptation of classic video games like Resident Evil and Monster Hunter World. Hell, this guy couldn't even make an adaptation of The Three Musketeers without adding a couple airships and a mustache-twirling Orlando Bloom. However, while his films certainly never lack creativity, they haven't been classically, well...
I know you can be mean, tough, foul-tempered bastards, but sometimes I get the feeling that deep down you're all...
Shut up.
Good. They have their fans and that's okay. It's okay to like a movie. We all connect to something different. However, there is one film in his back catalog that even the harshest of critics would find a lot in. A film that's actually good and harbors a small cult following. At this point, I know you've read the title of the YouTube video, so I'm going to give up on this Event Horizon bait and switch. Let's talk about Soldier. Released in 1998, Soldier, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, stars Kurt Russel and Connie Nielsen. The film follows Todd 3465 as he's raised from birth to be the perfect soldier. He spends 40 years in constant combat, moving from European nations to, at one point, the moons of Jupiter. When a new batch of soldiers come in. These guys are genetically modified and created from the ground up to be perfect. They weren't just selected as babies and then conditioned brutally their whole life like Todd was. And Todd's commander, Gary Busey, is all too eager to pit them against these new batch of recruits, which, even given the obvious age discrepancy, seems like a really bad move on his part, because every single challenge Todd fails against the new batch, up to the point when he has Kane, the top tier of the new genetically modified crew, fight Todd and two other soldiers in one-on-one combat at the top of a chain ladder. This results in the two older soldiers being instantly killed and Todd being left for dead. He is then quite literally thrown out with the trash. They need to cover this up because they want it to look like a regular training accident, not that they were just brutally pitting their genetically modified slave soldiers against each other. I'm not sure where the legal difference lies there. Todd is taken to a garbage planet. This is a singular planet where all of humanity has decided to dump their military waste, daily garbage. These remote-controlled drone spaceships drop garbage onto this planet like once a week. There's some great shots where you can see decommissioned aircraft carriers just strewn about. And he quickly finds himself living amongst a group of scavengers, survivors. This is a small town's worth of people that crash landed on this planet and have since made their way by scavenging through the rubble and building a town here. Now, at first they're reluctant to bring Todd in because he's injured and it's very clear that he is some kind of soldier because his name and dog tag are tattooed literally on his face. But he starts to ingratiate them slowly. Now, eventually, most of the film is about Todd's struggle to connect with this group of people with his crippling PTSD, as well as his inability to connect with people on an emotional level starting to change. However, the third act quickly throws a wrench into that because the new genetically modified soldiers introduced at the start of the film are now coming to this planet as some kind of training mission that also gives them full authority to just murder whoever they find on the world, because what better way to practice than with live targets? Naturally, Todd doesn't take too kindly to this and murders them all back one by one. Now, that's about as far as I want to get into the film without getting too much into spoilers and what happens. But I wanted to talk about this movie for a couple of reasons. One, I hadn't seen it in a long time, but it was one of those movies that I watched over and over as a kid. And I think that there was a lot to get out of this movie. Stuff that maybe Paul Anderson has sort of abandoned in his later career. Now, admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of his work. I haven't seen every single Resident Evil movie. I think that there's a lot more going on in this film, and I think that as an early work from director Paul W.S. Anderson, it shows a lot of style, it shows a lot of creativity. The opening montage, which is near wordless, is one of those perfect visual storytelling montages. I would liken it to the opening montage of Conan the Barbarian, where you really get a sense of who this character is, of what he's been through, of what his life is like, of this process, right from selecting them from birth all the way up to desensitizing them to violence as 5-year-olds, to murdering the ones who don't keep up with the rest of the group, all the way up to being cleared for battle. There's even one tremendous shot of a 17-year-old Todd, and then it zooms around the back of his head and turns into Kurt Russell pretty seamlessly. And let's talk about Kurt Russell's acting in this movie, because I think it's one of his better performances. Even though on its surface it is about a man who is conditioned to be very stoic, to be not able to show any emotions, his character refers to everybody regardless of their gender and status as sir. He really shines through in the quieter moments that this movie lets him have, in the scenes where he's dealing with his PTSD and trauma and where he's trying to connect to the people around him. Even when he saves the life of one of their members, he still feels threatened and anxious constantly by even the acceptance that he's getting from them. The effects and model work are dated, but I do believe they really stand up. There's a lot of creativity in the way that they've taken old materials and repurposed them into this town. I like the way that the sort of central mayor podium is actually just the canopy from an old fighter jet. There's lots of little details like that. There are some weaker CGI moments and certainly some mid-90s-esque action movie choices. But in the action scenes themselves, there is a lot of style and there is a lot of great cinematography and lighting. It really seems like Paul Anderson had two paths to go down when he was making movies like this. One was to veer towards the sort of action schlock that he does end up being known for, and he is very good at directing that kind of action.
523, negative.
But the other was like maybe going down something that was a little bit more character driven and a little bit more nuanced. And I think that the backlash he got on this film in particularly probably made him pull back from that. But again, I can't speak to his career because I haven't really seen all that much from him recently. I did see The Three Musketeers, and again, Orlando Bloom, what is your performance?
Love the outfit. Very retro. We were all wearing those in London. When was it? Last year or the year before?
Now, I'm not praising this film entirely. There are a lot of things I don't like about the movie. I don't like primarily Todd's sort of leering sexual aggression when it comes to Connie Nielsen's character, a married woman. He does tend to linger on her, and the camera does linger on her quite a bit. Now, I get that this is a character who's never really been able to have that kind of intimacy, and now he's seeing that in a woman for the first time. It just feels kind of inappropriate and very male-gazy. The villain, played by Jason Isaacs, is a straight-up mustache twirler. This guy is completely one-dimensional. He's the kind of villain that Jason Isaac can play in his sleep. He went a long way from roles like this to being Lucius Malfoy and Captain Lorca. As well, the third act, I feel, even though there is a lot of great action and a lot of great moments of Todd just destroying these soldiers, it does sort of stop the redemption plot for him in its tracks. The movie then quickly becomes about how can Todd kill these bad guys rather than how can Todd overcome the emotions and the PTSD that he's been going through. And I wish that the film had given him sort of a chance to have a closing redemption or a closing arc on that. It doesn't really allow that. It more just veers into action schlock, and it has a really unironic schmaltzy ending.
What are you gonna do?
I'm going to kill them all, sir.
Yeah. Cool guys don't look at explosions. They blow things up and then walk away.
So what do I think of this film overall? It is very macho with a capital M, but I think that there is an undercurrent to it of genuine emotion and exploration of what a character like this would actually be. This is a character that you have since seen ripped off multiple times in Agent 47, in Master Chief. It is a really neat setup for a character like this, but this movie is really the only one I feel that explores the sort of PTSD and trauma that would be bred into a person who went through that kind of childhood. There are a lot of questionable lessons in this movie, but overall, I think it's probably one of the most memorable of Paul W.S. Anderson's career. I'd say it's probably my favorite out of all of his films, and yes, that does include the aforementioned Event Horizon. And I think it has a lot going for it, but ultimately, the faults are very numerous. I'm going to give Soldier a 3 out of 5. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. We have other videos on our channel. You can check them out if you want to support the channel further. We do have a Patreon and Ko-Fi available for donation. You can find those links at the bottom of the page. Alright everybody, stay safe and be who you are.